Oh, it's got 40. Oh, no. No, the countdown doesn't work for me. Hi, everyone. We're live.
Yes, yes.
Take a deep breath.
Let's all take a deep breath.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Hold it at the top. How are you feeling now?
See, sometimes that's all it takes, right?
It really is all
That
it takes.
well, yeah, because it's like it's that moment when, like for me again, understanding, the nature of feeling and my looking at my dashboard, and it's like time just seems to accelerate until you stop and take a breath,
Right. Right.
and then it resets itself.
It's a very natural process of the body. It happens naturally, right?
Yes,
We just
yes.
enter the state of anxiety and fear, and like our heart rate goes up and our breathing
Mm-hmm.
gets faster, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
actually realize that is happening. But all that it takes to send a signal to your body to slow down and get back into a state, a different state of being
Yeah.
is to slow down the breathing, right? To
Yeah.
take a deep breath, hold it at the top for a few seconds. Like I said, I do it for 25 seconds, or you can do it
Mm-hmm.
just for 5, right? And then repeat it as many times as it takes. But it really doesn't take that long. It takes
No.
1, 2, 3 times, and
Yeah.
you're all set. You reset your nervous system.
And it's as simple as that.
It's as
That's the
simple as that.
that's what I love about some of the things that we've discovered and explored over the last couple of years, that a lot of what we point to and a lot of things that we talk about are really, really, really simple. They're not a complicated thing. And it's just like when you notice on your dashboard you're going way too fast for your car, like everything just feels like out of control. What do you naturally want to do? You want to
Right,
naturally take your foot off the gas pedal.
right,
Hey, guess
right.
what?
I mean,
That's what our minds want us to do too.
I would also argue that anything and everything that we feel challenged by really is that simple once we see it,
Yes.
once we realize what it is that's
Yeah.
challenging us about it,
Yeah.
right? Like that piece of awareness, we always talk about that, how that is the starting point. Because you
Yeah.
cannot change something you don't recognize or see or are aware of, right?
Well,
So that piece of
yeah.
awareness, and oftentimes you cannot even change things that you see and you're aware of, right? But if you don't even see it, right, it slips by.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, it it is an interesting process. Like it's an interesting phenomenon, interesting whatever you want to call it. Like
right,
like you said, like I can look at my red car. I don't have a red car anymore, but or my blue truck. I can look at the blue truck and it'll always be blue. Doesn't matter. I could
right,
wish it to be a different color. I could positively think it into a different color. I can close one eye, or take a deep breath. When I open, it'll still be blue. It'll still be blue.
right, right,
Um,
right.
but my experience of that blue can change with a fresh perspective, a fresh look.
Absolutely.
And I actually I was listening to a podcast, and the person quoted, and I can't remember who it was. I was gonna look it up, but he was basically saying, don't seek new territories. Just look at things with new eyes.
Right. New perspective. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. Hey, everybody!
So, hi everyone. We got
It's
right into it because we
it's the
need a little
show.
reset, right? Welcome everyone, and
What?
and I know we put out our announcement, but
Oh,
like, hey, we're officially a podcast.
we are an
We're
official
officially, right. We're everywhere. Turns out we're everywhere podcasts can be played.
Yes,
I don't know how
yes.
you did that, but you figured it out.
I figured it out. We still got a little hooks with Apple. Like
Okay.
I
That's
like
okay.
like I
We'll
was
be
joking
there.
before. It seems like they want a contract for my firstborn child or something because they've got some extra. It's like the paperwork is like is incredible. So we'll get that sorted out. If my daughter's listening to this, she doesn't have to worry. But anyways, welcome. This is the show about flow.
It is. It is about flow. We got into the flow of the conversation immediately, didn't we?
We got into a flow, didn't we? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about flow states. What are
Okay.
flow states? Are flow states the same thing as being in the flow? How do we get into them? What are they? How we experience them? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that most people do experience them. Right.
Oh, yeah. They might not
Hello,
recognize the
Dawn.
table.
Hello, Flo. Hi, Dawn. Welcome back.
Ah, hello, Flo. Good to see you again, Don. Yeah.
Right? What would you say? What's your take on it? Have you ever experienced flow in your
Oh,
life?
hundred like many times,
Right,
many times.
right,
Um, as a paramedic, they called it being in the zone, right? You know,
right.
and sports people that have ever been into sports kind of call it the same thing. You know, like they're in the zone, they're in a flow. Um, what I find interesting um, is there's a number of things, and I really would encourage anybody that's listening to give us some comments about it. Like, what is your experience when you notice yourself or have noticed yourself being in a flow state? Because the one characteristic that I've noticed is I don't know it when I'm in it.
Right, right.
It's only in reflection that
Yes,
I kind of notice it
right,
or notice that I
right,
was in it.
right.
Yeah.
Or as you come out of it, you realize hours have gone by
Well,
and you
that's what I
didn't
mean.
notice
Yeah.
time going by,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's why it's often really equated to, creative work, right?
Yes.
Or like, like you were talking about athletes while they're performing, right? Because they lose track of time. They're so deeply connected with what they're doing
Yeah.
that they lose track of time. And that happens to me often. Actually, last week when we were debating like what we should talk about this week, remember one of the things that I brought up was like I realized, well, actually I am often in flow states when I'm driving, when I'm like deep in my thoughts. Right? It's a little bit scary, but actually, like I never really got in an accident being in a flow state because you're doing, there's a part of you that's still executing while another part of you is really engaged mentally with
No,
whatever
it's
that
not
task
distracted
is.
driving. It's not distracted
It's not
driving.
distracted
No,
driving. It's
no.
not. But it, like I really realized I'm often so deep into my thoughts, like whether I'm elaborating something in my mind, processing something in my mind. Sometimes I'm like, oh, how did I get here? How did I drive all the way here? Like I didn't actually notice anything beyond probably what was in front of me and like what I needed to do in that
Hmm.
moment, right? But
Hmm.
my thoughts were somewhere else. And
Yeah.
that's exactly how it feels like for me when I'm doing creative work, when I'm designing. I'm with my thinking while I'm executing what I'm doing, but I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily focused on the execution. Is more being lost in my thoughts and being lost in it,
Well, you're
right?
lost in exactly. Like I know the one obviously. I mean, yes, I've been creative. You know, and when I'm in photography, when I get behind a camera, I can get lost. You know, as a paramedic, when we had really sort of high acuity busy kind of calls where you really kind of had to be on it, that you naturally just fell into it. You just
Right.
anything that needed to be done was done at the right time, in the right place, in the right order, And then at the end, we would often, come out of the hospital and kind of reflect a little bit on the call, and everybody would go like, wow, how did we manage to do that? How did we
Right.
manage to get all those patients? How did we get, kind of a thing? So there's a part of it for me that that we kind of just drop into it. And like Lee
Yeah.
says, it's kind of like home base. Thanks, Lee,
Right.
for
Right.
popping in. And when we're not in our thinking, we're just 100% in doing. And then that's that
Right.
perfect balance between knowing what to do at the right time, which can only come out of not thinking about it.
Right. Right. In a sense, you know what it reminds me of actually? It reminds me, it feels like the flip side of the coin of fight or flight, right? Fight or
Yes.
flight is driven by, the urgency, the danger, right? So you're hyper focused on saving your life or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
Running away from the danger, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're perceiving as being dangerous to you. And being in the zone is actually like being so hyper present with what you're doing that you also do not notice anything else around you, because
Yeah.
it is almost like being in a trance, right?
Very
It's
much so.
almost
Very much.
like you're so deeply focused that everything else just kind of fades away around you, right? And your thinking also slows down, right? And the same thing is true for, fight or flight. You're hyper focused on the one thing at hand, which is, running for your life,
Safety.
avoiding, the truck, safety, right?
Oh,
Right. But this is quite the opposite, right? You're hyper focused on creativity, on the thought that is, has you entrenched, or writing, or whatever that flow state it is for you, right?
yeah.
Whether it is, like music, or, and again, and I don't think that oftentimes we equate it to something creative, a creative task. It's not necessarily true, right?
No.
You
No.
can achieve that even in being deeply connected with a thought or something that you're trying
Well,
to create within your mind, right? Within your thinking.
because it's like you pointed to, there's a couple of things I like what you said. First of all, one of them was because it's a natural thing that we naturally drop into it. That means what's on offer is that it can happen more often, not necessarily while you're entrenched in something creative or in something doing. Like you could be in the zone mowing like sitting on the couch, like you could
Right,
like
right,
right. It's so easy to tie it to an activity. Like I could be in
right,
the zone
right,
washing dishes. I could be in the zone, which really for me, like, is being in a space where there's no thought.
right,
The thought being, oh, I have to figure my way out through this. And this is what I found with
right,
first responders, is that when they're in that flow or zone, there isn't any thinking.
right,
They like, I knew what to do. I knew that that person needed this. I knew that that person needed that. There wasn't like, oh, okay, here, look at my manual or whatever. There was nothing about that.
right, right,
Like you
right,
said, that's more of a flight or fight. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? Right.
right,
And
right.
that gets so busy that it kinks the flow. That
Mm-hmm.
I like using the analogy or the metaphor of a hose, because the more thinking you put into something, and perfectionists know this, the more thinking you
I
put in,
wouldn't know. I
you
wouldn't know. I wouldn't know anything about that.
okay.
Never.
I know. So I'm kind of just
Not
telling
me.
you, there's a world out there of perfectionists, right? And they overthink, and so they really kind of kink this hose. But the moment I notice that I'm kinking the hose, I can let go of that hose
Right,
and get a
right,
huge blast, whatever,
right,
kind of, because like,
right.
okay, right.
But really what creates that, like stops the flow is all this other stuff going on in the background, right?
Oh,
Like, because one is being hyper focused on safety, the other is being hyper focused in an activity that is something that you love doing, right? So it's the opposite. One is fear, one is love, something that I get just taken by, whether it is because I feel deeply connected to it, whether it is because I love doing it, it makes me feel relaxed or whatever it is, right? Or it's something that I'm really interested in solving. It's something that just takes me away, right? But in order for anything to take you away in that sense, the noise has to stop, right?
well, the
Fight or
noise
flight
does.
does, yeah,
Yep.
fight or flight does that automatically for you because now you're like hyper focused on running for your life, right? In the same, it is not possible to be in the flow of anything if you're busy up here
No, you can't be
rehearsing and
deeply, you can't be
rinsing and
deeply.
recycling your
Yeah,
thoughts, right?
yeah.
So
So sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna challenge one thing.
go ahead.
Only because as you were speaking, I was just thinking, and this is just something I'm just thinking. I don't know if I'm right or wrong or whatever, but I do notice that there is when say a tragedy happens, like an earthquake, or and I understand Los Angeles has just been getting a bit of earthquakes over the last couple of days. Um, the initial shock is, fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen, kind of a thing, right? But afterwards, there is almost a collectiveness of people that are losing, like not necessarily like the volunteers that come to rescue, like the rescuers.
Right, right,
They they just drop all their thinking and they just get right into the zone. Like there's
right,
a
right.
moment where, and so it's not like so the thing that triggered me, sorry for stuttering a little bit, but is the need to love something to get into the zone. I don't
Well,
think you.
I think, right, right. I think you're making a very good point. So it's either something that you love or, something that you feel deeply connected to, right? Because what brings someone to rescue and to just throw themselves into that is the connection with wanting to have an impact by saving lives, by, helping out, right? So there is a deep connection with the thing that you're doing, right?
Yes.
Because if that connection is missing, right? So it can be something that you love, or it can be something that means meaningful to you, right? That means something to you, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's really possible to be in flow with something that you don't enjoy or you don't have a reason to be in, right? To be connected to, right?
Well,
Because then there's something else that kicks in, right?
yeah.
The thinking and the not liking it. Why am I doing this? And like
Well,
the
that part. Yeah.
resistance kicks
Yeah.
in, right?
But when you get a call to action, and Lee, I'm just going to throw this up on the screen again. Like Lee brings a point about pure fear is 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 in the zone. I mean, it's something to look at. Um, what I'm kind of thinking about, and this is just again thinking, I'm just kind of exploring the idea or the notion, is this thing called call to action.
Mm,
So in a case of there's an event in front of me that needs my attention. I mean, I obviously can do two things. I could overthink it and or be very fearful of it and try and run away from it, or I could actually engage in it. And in some
mm,
ways, in some ways, and I'm starting to reflect on this. There's a couple of times where I actually was in the zone in a very traumatic, sort of violent incident that happened,
right, right.
because I had to act, but there wasn't a lot of thinking. There was just sort of like, I need to engage in this, I need to be
Mm-hmm,
in this.
mm-hmm,
and and I just was. And then afterwards it was like, oh, it's funny, I forgot all about this whole incident. But so there's a multiple, because it's a natural process for us to be in. We could probably be in it in a number of different ways that we are not kind of thinking about. if that makes
Right,
sense. Any
right.
particular
I mean, it's almost like there should be a distinction between being in the zone, right? Because
yeah,
like Lee is pointing to, fear can actually put you in the zone, right?
yeah.
Running for
Well,
your
it did to
life
me. Like when I think
is
about it,
very much in the zone.
yeah.
Uh, but when I think about flow states, I think about something that is completely different, at least personally, than
Hmm.
being just in the zone, right? There's more harmony to that thinking for me. There's more, like um, there is no fear in being in flow, being in flow with what you're doing, being in flow with life, being in flow with, like your surroundings, your environment, your relationships, right? So now we're kind of like stepping out of like the flow state per se. But I do think it's an important question to answer, like, are flow states and being in flow with life
Hmm.
the same thing, similar, related? Is there any connection between the two? And I strongly believe there is. It's just
Yes.
the degree at which they happen that is different, right? But the
Well,
principle behind them, I
yeah.
would say, is the same.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because like you can't. I mean, the laws of physics. If you want to go with the laws of physics, no two objects can. And so I know somebody will argue with this with quantums and all this other kind of stuff. Way beyond my pay grade. I just know that if I try and put two rocks together, they're not going to merge. Okay, they're not going to merge. And I find the same with thought. So you can't hold on to two thoughts at the same time.
Right.
And if I have a bunch of fearful thinking, so if I have fear, and then in this case, I don't mind sharing the incident. The incident was I was being attacked by a dog, and
I
so
remember that. Right.
yes,
I knew
yeah,
you already. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
telepath.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and I shared it in one of our episodes way last year, and so I saw this dog is coming up to me, just ready to pounce. And yes, there was the initial, I could feel the adrenaline in my body just start to surge right through. But I knew enough to know that if I stayed in that state, I wasn't going to perform at my optimal. Like I was like, I don't know what I was going to do. I just know that it wasn't going to be good. So I actually, I could felt myself letting go of that fear, and something more powerful took its place. Something that brought me into a state where all I needed to know was, oh, this is what I need to do right now. This is what I need to do right now. And and everything went fine afterwards. Nobody got hurt. Caused the neighborhood to make a big commotion about it. It was kind of because it was noisy. I think I barked louder than that dog, but anyway. Um, the but it's interesting because I did find myself even in that moment to drop, so I couldn't hold on to that fear. There's something else that fell away, and and got replaced. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was because only on reflection, you know, it's like, okay, how did, like, wow, that could have been so different. Like, and
Hmm.
I'm calm, and it's like, let's go talk to the owner of this dog, and I'm still calm. It's like,
Right. Right. Yeah, so listen, I would say, even from this example that you just gave us of an experience you had, it really is, being in the zone is really about that state of hyper focus, right?
mm,
And it seems like no matter what the focus is, whether it's like triggered by fear, or it's triggered by something that you enjoy doing, or you're deeply committed to,
mhm,
it's the act of being hyper focused on something
yeah.
that creates that sense of losing track of time, and losing sense, the sense of everything else around you,
Oh,
right? And
yeah,
just be completely entrenched in what you're doing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a good comment, Lee. The meaning that we give it, We
Right.
use fear
Right.
sometimes to describe panic and worry. Right. Yeah. I,
Right.
and we've talked about language and labels quite often in our show. It's like,
Right. Right.
um, and our language does get in the way a lot of times. Um, you know, we even talk about the need to be more in the zone. You need to be more in the flow, right? So all of a sudden, it's now we got pressure, right? It's like,
Now we got pressure. And you know what? I would say if there's anything to feel pressure, if there's anything we're going to feel pressure about, that's a good thing to feel pressure about. Because if you can at least try and be more in flow with your life, right? I'm not saying like constantly try and be in the flow state every day, every day, every day. But if you can strive for that, 10% of the time, we start small. We love to start small, right? There is such benefit in living that way, right? And all the things that create that flow state are beneficial to us, right? Because what does help you get
yeah,
into that state is slowing down the thinking that holds you back to begin with, right?
yeah, yeah. And what is? I mean, notice the differences. So notice when you're not and when you are. Like, what
Right,
are the subtle differences? For me, when I'm not in flow, there's a lot of effort in everything. There's a lot of
right,
anxiety. There's a lot of other
right,
emotions that are not helpful.
right,
They
right.
and if I stay there, like stress, right? We know that has a way of releasing chemicals and causing other issues with our bodies. But when you're in a flow state, I'm not worried about anything.
When you're in a flow state, you are executing on what you need to execute on, right? But you're also the space for creativity to come in, for ideas to come in,
Everything,
for like
possibility,
everything.
possibility.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So
So
so one is more narrow focused.
right.
Flow is more.
Well,
So the
flow opens up the door for new things to come in, but in order for that door to open up, you really have to get rid of the noise, right?
well, yeah, and part of that is noticing that you're in the noise. Yeah,
Right,
that right.
right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And please, good. We got some good interaction. I see. Don was talking about that he had. I'll just throw this up. It's a long thing, so I'll just kind of read it. He bought an inner balance from Heart Math, um, and it's a device that helps monitor your brain and heart rate
Your
variability.
breath,
And when
your
I use
breath,
it, what's that?
your breath, not your brain.
Your breath.
Yes,
Yes. Did I say brain?
you said brain. It's okay. Your breath and heart rate variability. When I use it, I notice that I get in a flow state. Right. It really like flow states actually are very connected to breath, right? To slowing down your breathing,
Well,
we should
well,
say.
yeah,
Right.
because part of it is breathing. Another, like if when you notice it, breathing is a direct result of, like if you're under stress or have an extra anxiety or being overwhelmed. If you look and it's like, I'm breathing a lot more
Right.
faster. And and
Right. Right.
and how we started our show this morning was a really cool way of sort of pulling back on the gas pedal a little bit and just kind of like, let's just slow down here a bit. Let's just,
Yeah.
relax. You know, we got all the time in the world.
Well, like not like like we said at the beginning, when you slow down your breathing, you send a signal to your body that there's no danger, that it can calm
Yeah,
down, that it can relax, right? And when you relax, so does the rest of you, right? Your entire body relaxes, your thinking relaxes because you're
mm,
focusing on your breathing, right? You're taking the focus away from the thing that's causing you to breathe really heavily and really fast,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're slowing it down, right? So breath and slowing down your thinking and getting rid of the negative chatter, I mean, that seems to be from every single conversation that we have, the one thing that's a must, right? Just scrap even getting into flow states. If you could accomplish slowing down your thinking, getting rid of the negative chatter and the noise that's constantly keeping you rehearsing and recycling your thoughts and events, right? They keep you busy up there. Just doing that alone opens up so much space within you, within your mind,
Well,
to create more things, to think about things differently, right?
you like you pointed out two things. One I heard earlier, it's a very present moment experience.
Right.
And when you reflect a bit on, okay, so you've got a busy head. What is that busy head filled with? Nothing that's in the present.
Nothing that's in the present.
Nothing
Exactly.
in the present. So there has to be something there around noticing, oh, I'm either in my head or in my living kind of a thing, right?
Right.
And when I'm in my head, I'm not in the present moment because I'm thinking about whatever happened yesterday or in the past, which doesn't really exist anymore, or I'm trying to make up a future and now I'm worried about this future that hasn't really happened yet.
Right.
So so it really is about, for me anyways, it's about noticing, oh, I'm back in my head again, and just relax, like, take that deep breath. And
Right.
this is kind of what happens a bit, like even those flashbacks, having that dog charge me, or I remember being called to a really, what was in going on in my head, it was multiple patients, and I was going to be first on scene. So my head is going, oh my goodness, what am I going to see? How am I going to manage all this? Where are all these patients going to be? Where, oh, da 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 da, right? And I had enough sense in me to know, well, wait a minute, I'm not even there yet.
Right. Right.
What, like, just drop that thought, see what's in front of me when I get there. And so I felt like it was very present now. Like I could, I was driving a lot more smoother. I got there on scene. I, quickly my mind went on in automatic kind of a thing, and it's just like
Response.
that
Yeah.
was the steps, right? So,
Right, right. So, I mean, it very much seems to be connected with staying present, right?
mhm.
But to be able to stay that present with something, there has to be something that keeps us there, right? So, again, I use the word like something that you love.
Yeah,
We can swap it for something that deeply motivates you to be there, right? Typically,
it
something that
holds
you
your
enjoy
attention.
doing, right,
Yeah,
holds your attention. What
yeah,
holds your attention is something that moves you to be
yeah,
there, right? Either that you love, that you're really committed to, that you feel like you can have an impact in the world or for someone, right? Like saving somebody's life, right?
yeah.
It's something that it has to have a meaning for you, right? I don't believe that it's possible to drop into flow states with something that you don't really enjoy doing, right? If I have to show up and like start writing about something that I don't really love writing about or I don't really agree with, I'm gonna have a much harder time falling into the zone
Yeah,
with
but
that.
can we play with that a little bit?
Sure, let's play with that.
Okay. So what? So so part of our judgment piece is thinking I'm not going to like it. So that's thought.
Right, right.
And I know there's a lot of things in our businesses that we don't like, right? We call them shit
But
sandwiches.
it's also, I would also say it's alignment, right? Because yeah, we can, it is thought, but it is also what fits us, right? So I think that oftentimes is when we're misaligned with something where that resistance comes in, right? Yeah, you can drop any thought, but something that you're resisting is going to create a lot of thoughts to drop.
Oh,
Would you
totally.
agree with that?
Oh, oh,
So
and that is part of that's holding us, because if, okay, so if, let's assume then that if flow state, let's play with that. If flow state is our natural state, like we're like then it's only our thinking that removes it. So
Right.
so if I'm tied up in, I'm not going to like this task. I hate doing book work. I hate doing my accounting. I hate doing my taxes. Now, every year in April we have is our tax year, and I hate it. I just hate it. I hate gathering all the receipts. I hate gathering all, like, this is my thinking, right? But I
Right.
tell you, when I sort of say, Rick, pull up your pants and let's get going, it's like, it's like, I, when I'm in it, it's like,
Right. Well,
why
you
did,
draw, yeah, you're making a very good point, right? Eventually, we bring ourselves to do it, and it's the moment that we drop our thinking that we can
yes,
get in flow with that. You're a hundred
100%,
percent right. A hundred
100%.
percent. The
Hell,
problem is, the problem is, it may take a minute to get there when there's a lot of resistance, and that's what I'm saying,
I
right?
agree. I agree.
It's a
And
lot easier to be in flow with something that you actually enjoy doing, so you don't
oh,
have all of the
no
resistance to fight
arguments,
up
no
against,
arguments.
right?
I have no qualms heading into my studio or heading into my workshop,
Right,
any of
right,
that stuff, right?
right,
But I tell you, like, April the 1st comes around, it's like, and my wife will say, "Have you done the taxes?" No, no, I still have 30 days.
right, right. No, and I agree with you. So it's important to really understand this point
Yes.
that you can actually get in, in the zone with even something that you don't like.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I would say if you find yourself up against all this resistance, that can also be a clue to
Yes.
whether or not the thing you're doing is serving you or
Yeah.
something that you truly enjoy in your life, right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
realigning yourself with things that you actually enjoy doing. There are something that you choose to do in alignment with your values and who you are. That is a lot easier, right? It's a better ground for being in the zone and in flow states than it is to
100%.
constantly fight
Yeah.
up against, right? But I also get the point that you're making. It really is a thought away, right?
Yes.
Kicking the thoughts away, but there's a difference between kicking one or two thoughts away and a
And
hundred
and a,
of them,
and a
right?
whole truck full of them. Yeah. A whole train of thought.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
No, 100%. But it's possible, right? That's the
It
neat thing
is.
about
It
it.
is
It's very
possible.
possible. And life, it would be wonderful if everything was that was in front of me that I am asked to do was everything I really, really enjoyed, right?
Right,
Or
right,
aligned. No, I can't do it because it has nothing to do with this, right?
right.
Um,
But
but
but I would say if you could live your life staying in that place of always asking yourself, is this something that I truly enjoy? And
yeah,
can I, if I don't, can I drop it? That's
yes,
also a good way to find that flow with life, right?
yeah,
Sorry, I
yeah.
know I interrupted you and
No,
you
no, no.
probably lost your train of thought.
Yeah.
I broke your flow.
Well, but that's what I love about, the whole analogy of a train of thought, is because there's always
Right,
another boxcar that's coming through that'll
right,
grab my
right,
attention. But it's like there are a lot of times and this is where you really kind of got not get into the trap of thinking it's the activity that's doing it. Because if it was the
right.
activity, you would say, well, I got to get in the flow state. Last time I mowed the lawn, I was in the flow state. Therefore, I've got to go mow the lawn. It's like, it's not the activity. It's
No,
not.
it's not the activity.
No.
It's a brain state that you're in. It really is about that deep presence with the task that you're immersed in. It's like a
Yeah.
hyper focus in the moment.
Yeah. In the moment.
And there is, and I would say that in speaking of, again, I know I made this point a couple of times because I want to make a distinction. And as I'm saying it, I'm like processing it myself. There is a difference between being in a flow state and being in flow with life. But the more you're in flow with your life, and the more those flow states can happen,
Hmm.
right,
Oh, 100%.
seamlessly and right effortlessly.
I like this last month, like I did Michael Neal's workshop. I shared this before with about effortless success.
Right,
And it's about exactly what you're talking about, being more in the flow. of what is happening currently, because there's two things that we could do. There's two strategies. One is I can try and go out there and manage all the circumstances in front of me so that they suit my preference,
Right.
my expectations, or I can work on me and just be more in tune of what's going out there and be more of a flow along, almost along for the ride.
Right. Focusing on what you can control.
Well, exactly. And
Right.
I've noticed that, it's sort of like, okay, well, I don't need to know 10 steps down the road. I just need to know what I need to do next. And a lot of times, I'll wake up in the morning, and I love what Steve Chandler says every morning. I kind of adopted a little bit. It's sort of like, surprise me. My
Right.
dad will, I'll help my dad in the morning, and the first thing he asks me is, what are we going to do today? And it's like, I really don't know. We have to see what the day is, right? We have to see what's coming forward.
Right.
And there's some things that we have planned, like like on Wednesdays we have a show. But even though we have it in the schedule, it's no guarantee Rick's going to show up.
Yes. We've experienced that one a couple of times.
But it's like, but yeah, I mean, emergencies come up and
Right.
other things
Right.
happen, storms and that. But if you watch those episodes, you got into the flow.
I was in the zone, yes,
You
especially
got
when you
into the flow.
disappeared right
Yeah,
in the middle of our show. I
yeah.
remember I was like, okay, he has disappeared. We don't know if he's coming back. What can we talk about now? And you know what? Actually, the audience was in the zone with me because they started asking me questions and were interacting with each other, right? They helped me out.
Yeah. No,
Thank you, everyone, if you're listening.
but that's we could easily get into our heads in a situation like that. Oh, now what am I going to
Right,
do, right?
right,
And I I truthfully get into those situations sometimes. I get overwhelmed, and I look and I go, oh God, how am I going to get out of this one now? Like, what am I going to do now? Like, just before we got into the show here, my graphics card for some reason was acting up,
right.
and
That's
it's
what
like,
we're breathing.
yeah. And I said, well, okay, let's just reset the computer, right? What else am I going to do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And we'll see what happens after that.
right.
I also heard my thinking going into, I don't want to disappoint Fatih for not showing up again, any of those, all these extra thinking that had nothing, not it wouldn't have helped fix the computer, right?
No,
So it's just exactly what you said. Take a breather, take a breath.
right,
Let's
right.
just see what happens. Right?
So I would really say the secret to getting into the flow, right,
Yeah.
is being deeply present.
Yeah.
Breath work really helps with that.
Hmm.
And being aligned with what you're doing, being connected to what you're doing, whichever way that is. You have
Yeah.
to have a high stake in it, right? You have to be motivated to be in it, right?
Yeah.
And also really focusing on what you can do, right? Because the moment that you focus on something that you cannot do, now you're getting into your thinking, right?
And you're
Now you're
getting,
getting into projecting and controlling and all the scenarios that you create. You recycle thoughts, you bring back like experiences of the past, and you project them into the future. You very busy work that gets you out of the flow, not
yeah.
just of the moment, but of life, truthfully,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I wonder if anyone has any questions actually in the audience, or anything you're curious about, you need clarification on,
Yeah.
anything you want to add.
Yeah.
Always feel free to
Yeah. Interrupt
put
us,
them
because
in
I
the chat.
interrupted
Yeah,
you.
yeah. We interrupt each other all the time. This should have been called the interruption show.
Well, didn't we come up? We came up with a number of different names, and everyone we had, I think we called ourselves interrupters, or something along those lines. Of course, it was taken.
Disruption.
Disruptions.
Disruptors. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had many, many, many different names before we became an honest look. And we pulled the plug. It was like, that's it.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
not
it
thinking about
just
this
felt right,
anymore.
right? We dropped some thinking about that, and
do you use Don is asking, oh, we did it at the same time. Look at us.
I see. When did you become tech savvy?
I don't know. Sometimes I try to help out. Do you use focused breathing to get back into flow states? I mean, I would say that you focused breathing helps you get present, right? And out of emotions. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That focusing, like emotions trigger a reaction in your body, right? Sometimes those emotions can trigger a really good reaction, right? I can be in a flow state and be doing something that's turning out really nice and get really excited about it, right? So we make that distinction. Emotions, feeling emotions is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I would guess that those athletes are like flying down the slopes are emotionally connected to what they're doing too. They have a sense of excitement, right? That connects them to that, right? So I would say that emotions of fear, emotions that make you go into the chatter, into the noise, into the questioning, can be put at bay by slowing down your breathing, right? It really all depends on what an emotion, what reaction that emotion is causing,
Yeah,
right?
and for me, my personal uh, take is thought and feelings are two sides of the same coin, and for me it's an indicator of what's going on. So when the first thing I don't necessarily hear what's going on, but I certainly feel what's going on,
Feel it, right?
and one that's like is always right there for me is this feeling of being overwhelmed, and I can feel sometimes, oh, I got this tightness in my chest, and I check my pulse to make sure I'm not having a heart attack or I'm not sweaty or anything like that. it, and denial, yes, denial is one of the symptoms, but it's just an indicator, right? You're sort of like, oh, I'm being overwhelmed. And
Mm-hmm.
all it does for me, and this is where I use Sid Banks' quote: if all we learned was not to be afraid of our experiences or not to be afraid of our feelings, that alone could change the world. Because just because I have a feeling doesn't mean I have to do something with it or
Mm-hmm.
analyze it. What it
Right.
means is it's an indicator that, oh, I need to slow down a bit. And that's usually what it is. I'm just going way too faster than
A
life.
negative emotion. Yeah,
Yeah,
negative emotion. Right.
yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
because a happy emotion, I never worry about it. I don't know who
Oh,
worries.
keep going.
Yeah,
Right. A happy emotion indicates keep
yeah,
going.
yeah.
Right. Right.
So it's really for me, it's about slowing down. Sometimes it's getting away from what I'm doing, getting into a different like get distracted, noticing how present I am. And yeah, I do, because we are born with the first breath. Breathing to me is vital, obviously. I mean,
Absolutely.
and when I notice, it's like, okay, yeah, just back away, take a
Yeah.
couple of deep breaths,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's
And
it.
like holding that breath at the top does wonders.
Yeah.
Whether it's like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or 25 seconds, like I do, or however long you want, holding that breath really slows you down. Really
Oh,
slows you down. It takes one or two times of doing that you have already flipped the way you
well,
feel.
and if you ever have done that, like if somebody were to put you in a jar and you used up all the oxygen, you get very present very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not thinking about the dishes, or you're not thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow. Like, you're very
Very
very present,
present.
right?
Right,
And so
right.
there is a connection. There's an obvious connection there. And I just love playing with it. I don't know, I don't understand it fully. I just know for myself, and this is where I encourage anybody to explore what works for you. Like breathing might not work for you in the way we're describing it.
I mean, I think breathing works for
Well,
everyone.
I think yeah, I know, but I'm just encouraging people to try it, right?
It's like, please, everyone, keep on breathing. Please
Yeah,
do.
yes, yes, yeah. I know. I'm not going to go into some dark humor here, but but anyways, yeah.
So I wanted to actually, for a minute, talk about what we have accomplished here that I feel really proud of
Okay.
to conclude this show, and invite everyone to go and listen to this on your own time
Oh,
on podcast.
yeah.
We put a lot of work putting every episode on podcast. It's available to you anytime. You can listen to it on your own time. You can speed it up. You can slow it down. You can save it. You can go back to it.
Yes.
It's an amazing tool. You don't even have to have your video on. It's very convenient. Like, I do a lot of my learning and listening as I do other things on podcast or audiobook. So we really wanted to offer that, and I wanted to put it out there because it's just fresh and new. It just came out, just out of the oven.
And that's what's on offer here too is when you come on our show, although we didn't say anything in the beginning, but even with the podcast, any podcast or anytime you do any inner exploration, is to really kind of listen from a way that you would listen to music. Listen in a way that doesn't affirm what you already know, because the
Right,
answers aren't in your knowledge. If you had
right,
all the answers, you'd probably be doing a whole lot better. You probably wouldn't even be on learning here. But
right.
we're always looking for something fresh and new. We're so that's what's on offer is to relax, take a deep breath, like Fatih said, hold it for a couple of seconds, let it go, and just let go of any knowledge, like any judgments or any thoughts.
Preconception, yeah.
And
Any
yeah,
thoughts really
and
around it?
yeah, and just look for something fresh and new. We learn through insight. We learn through those aha moments. Oh, I see how that works now. Oh,
Right,
okay.
right.
And
We also learn through comparing notes and hearing different perspectives, right?
well, and that's
When we
what's been
hear
fun.
something different,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's interesting. You can go back to an old podcast of somebody, and it's like, did they remix this or something? Like, I don't
right,
remember, right? It's like going into an old
right,
book again, right? It's like, when did they
right,
add this chapter? It's like,
right,
yeah.
right.
So thanks everybody. Thank you very much. This
Thank
has
you
been
for being here again. Go ahead and listen to us on podcasts, subscribe, and leave us an honest review, because your feedback really helps us make this better for you
oh,
and
and
offer
your
you
comments, we really
conversations.
appreciate
Right.
the engagement too. Really, really appreciate the engagement. And
Absolutely. And until next time.
okay.
Oh, we have a guest next week. We also have
Yes.
a guest. We just don't want to let you go today. We have a guest next week.
What number is our next episode?
Right. So many announcements. It's our 50th episode next
Yes.
week. And we have a very special guest.
Yeah.
Do you want to give away the guest?
Well, it's Dominic, good friend of ours,
Uh,
Dominic Scafidi,
Dominic
and
Scafidi is coming back with us, and we're very excited about the conversation we're going to have about spiritual bypass. I have the feeling he's going to go into bypass,
yeah,
period, right? And I am so excited to hear his take on it, because I
yeah,
do
it's going to
think
be a
is
likely.
yeah,
Yeah, so come
right,
in, come in with the open mind and be prepared to interact with us. That would be really cool, really cool.
right, right. All right, everyone. We'll
Take
see
care.
you next week.
See you,
Ciao,
Fatih.
ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.